I've got some strange questions for you and see if you can help. All right. So normally I talk about my game and my failures, but let's today talk about somebody else's game and see if we can avoid failures. And so we're going to talk about Mortarmen. Now, you may remember the name Mortarmen because we had played it a couple weeks ago. Before it had been released into early access, we actually had access to it and played with the community and some of the developers and given them a bunch of feedback. Now, they're trying to do this thing where it's like a bit of comedy and fast-paced movement with strategic FPS shooting. I don't think the trailer conveys that in a way and instead makes it look janky versus funny and cool. I don't know. In the big maps, I don't think it worked. There's smaller maps we're playing now that maybe it works better. We're going to play those probably next week. So they've launched though, and they are in early access, and they are $13 or something in a classic 10% off sale to start. But they are in that weird problem that all indie multiplayer games have. Now I'm going to explain something of how stats work that people are going to quote. And people got really mad at me last time I did this. So I'm not going to pick a particular site, but this is how all of these sites do it. This is not their fault. This is not a problem. Even after I explain it, someone will then go make death threats against me like last time because they're so mad and they have such a personal vested interest in this. But when we were originally doing Left 4 Dead 1, we had a problem. And that was people were used to games that had server browsers. And this was Valve's first game that didn't have server browsers. Instead, we had these lobbies that formed up. When they filled up, we made them disappear. And so people thought no one was playing the game. So at that request, our team they created for Steam a way that you could query and see how many people were in a game at a given moment. We would then post that up in the UI of the game, and that would say how many people were playing. And the question was, how accurate did that number have to be? And our response was not very. It could just do it every 20 minutes. We don't really care. We can do it every 30 minutes. It doesn't matter. So, okay, it's not a always polled number. When you look at the stats for how they do like the top 100 or whatever games played with current player counts, you'll see those numbers move around all of the time because they're being polled way more frequently, okay? But these other numbers aren't because that's not what the system is created for. So what happens is these other than third-party sites use that number and they go, this is how many players are in a game. But for games that have low frequency of players, they also don't want to have to poll that number that often because it just doesn't matter or change that much, right? And so what'll happen is if your game has sessions that are like 30 minutes in length or under an hour, you will often have games that form up. It could be 8 people playing it and then go down and they'll never get counted into that system. And so this is I've talked about before is that system creates a problem for small games because they're undercounted and these really angry, ugly people go look at that SteamDB stat and they're like, oh, there's only one person who's ever played your game. Like they don't even know how to read the stat they're looking at, right? They think that that's all the players, not just the concurrent player for that second or the average concurrent. But that is what that number means. And that is why that number is inaccurate for low count games. Sorry, it is. Now, again, you can get really mad at me. You're going to get really angry at me. You're going to call me a loser and all kinds of great stuff. Cool. I'm glad I could be of service for your empty, shallow lives. I give you some meaning that you can yell at me. But that is how that system works. I know how the system works. I am intimately understanding of how that system works. And that is the problem with that system. That is not a problem of those sites. That is not their fault. I understand why they do it that way in the services they provide. But that is what happens. And you get these people calling dead game. Right. Heck, Starfield got called a dead game. It's a single player. You don't need other people to play it with you. It's not dead, really. All right. But so how does a game that starts quiet, like Mortarmen starting, not get this dead game moniker around it and drag it down? So originally, when we were launching the Anacrusis, my thought was, well, we will launch on Game Pass and we'll have a lot of access to players. We did, over 1 million people. And they'll play our game and Steam players will be able to go in and then we'll grow the communities together. Problem is nobody bought the game on Steam because they could get it for free on Game Pass. And that game was rough too, right? Let's be honest. But with that, then we also my thing was we can launch rough and we can get better over time and then people will play it. That is true for games people care about. For games people don't care about, let's be honest, they don't care, and you don't get those, right? So I would always use Rainbow Six Siege, as it launched really poorly and then came around and was very successful. But they had a bunch of people that had a vested interest in wanting to see that game be good. Nobody had a vested interest outside my mom, she's dead, for the Anacrusis to sell well, right? And so we didn't have that audience until when we added Versus. We didn't see this big player bump because people were all excited finally, right? Even though I'm really happy with the game and where it's at, that's the reality of it, right? It doesn't make a difference if it's a good game or not at this point. The problem is the perception is people aren't playing it. It's set up to play single player. It is just what it is, right? I'm not going to try to sell you the game now. But so that's where we're at. And so now I'm seeing Mortarmen start in the same kind of way. And so I'll link to the webpage here. So I've given them feedback on that. I think I thought the Steam page and the videos didn't do a good job of portraying what it is. And instead the coolness and the funniness comes off more as jank in a traditional FPS. Maybe. So I'm curious, what would make you buy this game? Looking at the Steam stuff, what on Steam, if you've played it and have an understanding of it, would you change to help? And then if you haven't played it or seen it, but kind of understand that it is different than what is being presented, what would be the way to do it? And is there a way to save a game that launches quietly, right? Because it's kind of like for indie FPSs or indie games like this, right? You're either hitting and running, like you do something like Lethal Company, right? Like out of the gate, that game was big, right? There's a bunch of pent up excitement over it. It hit, it went off crazy. It's awesome, right? And like you'll see this with like what was it, the Battle Bits game? Like that went crazy for a while, and then oh my god, the cheating, and then it's gone. But like there's some games that just do have that swell at the start, and that's a different problem. How to sustain that? This is the hey, you don't have that swell at the start because you don't have either all the marketing or you didn't build the community or whatever, right? I mean, I make videos now because I want to have a community when I launch my next thing. It sucks, kind of. I like talking to you guys, but still, I like to be sitting with my cat right now. But so what are the ways? What are the ways? Let's look at this. I didn't ask them to do this. So, Dimitri, sorry, Demente. Sorry. I'm going to do this on my own. What are the ways that could help the game? What are the ways that could be presented differently? What are the ways that would incite you to want to purchase it? But I think you have to remember and that's without changing the game to not be what the developers want it to be. They want it to be this game that is different. And so how do you approach that? How do you bring people into that? How do you introduce them to that in a way that will want them to play? It's a hard one. It really is. It really is, because I don't care the team doing it. If you don't come out hot these days, it's really hard because there are a bunch of people who will very excitedly scream dead game, dead game, dead game, as if that gives them meaning in life, versus, hey, awesome, someone else made a game. How can we celebrate that? How can we help them? How can we engage that? Because I don't know about you, but I want more games. I want more games trying things. I want more games that don't have to do a bunch of hype and BS and try to sell me what they're selling me, but instead letting me play and understand and like. And so, I mean, that's why I've been playing some indie games lately. And again, if you have an indie game that you want me to play and stream and talk about, I'm more than happy to do that. Single player actually kind of works best in that format. And this week, to tack on to the end of this, we are actually going to be playing some stuff online. You're free to join us with, we are going to be playing, oh my God, what is it? It is, what's Pirates, Vikings, and Knights 2. That'll be on Thursday night at 8 p.m. and then or Wednesday night at 8 p.m. and then Tuesday night at 8 p.m. We are actually playing a very, very strange Left 4 Dead mod that is just strange. We had played it a little bit before, and I really wanted to go back and complete the whole thing. And so that'll just be streaming. You're free to join us at twitch.tv/straightchat there. And then feel free to give me feedback on this one here or on streams or, whatever. Just don't yell at me. Please don't yell at me.